Nigeria is moving through one of its most confusing moments. The kind of moment where people look around and ask, how did we get here? And this week, one voice cut through the noise with sharp force: Peter Obi. He spoke without fear. He spoke without trying to sound nice. And he made it very clear. Nigeria now rewards criminality. That statement was not casual. It was not a political jab. It was a direct attack on the direction of the country. And it came at a time when Nigerians were already tired, already frustrated, already watching the system drift further away from fairness. Obi's words hit because they came from a man who rarely speaks without weighing his statements. When he does speak, he speaks with intention. So when he said Nigeria now rewards criminality, it forced people to stop and think. Not because the line was dramatic, but because it was true in a painful way. What pushed him to this point? It was the decision by the Tinubu administration to nominate former INEC chairman Mahmood Yakubu, Reno Omokri, and several others for ambassadorial roles. To many Nigerians, it looked like a normal government announcement. But to Obi, it was a clear signal of a deeper problem: the collapse of moral standards in leadership. He saw a pattern. A pattern where people who contributed to division, distrust, or controversy somehow end up being elevated. A pattern where the public service is treated like a refuge for politically connected individuals. A pattern where the question is no longer who is qualified, but who is loyal. Obi's point was simple. How can a nation progress when it rewards people who damage public trust? How can we talk about reforms when the system itself refuses to hold anyone accountable? How can we build a credible future when the past mistakes are being celebrated instead of corrected? For him, it was not about personalities. It was about principles. It was about the message the government was sending to the public. Because every appointment communicates something, whether leaders admit it or not. By elevating individuals who were already surrounded by public doubt, the government created a new level of frustration. People who survived hardship, who followed the law, who voted in good faith, suddenly felt betrayed again. It was as if the nation was telling them, your honesty does not matter. Your struggles do not matter. Your trust does not matter. Obi saw this collapse of values and called it exactly what it is: the rewarding of wrongdoing. And that phrase alone carried enough weight to shake political conversations across the nation. What made his statement even more powerful was the calm manner he delivered it. No noise. No anger. Just direct truth. And that made it even harder to ignore. For many years, Nigerians have watched their leaders make controversial choices. But this time, something felt different. This time, the public was tired of pretending everything was normal. This time, the bond of trust between citizens and government was thinner than ever. Obi used that moment to highlight something Nigerians have been afraid to discuss openly. The system is drifting toward a culture where those who bend rules are treated as assets, while those who speak out are treated as threats. He reminded the public that leadership is not supposed to work like that. Leadership is supposed to protect truth, reward integrity, and punish misconduct. But when leadership flips that order, the entire nation becomes unstable. According to him, appointing people with unresolved questions around their actions is not governance. It is not reform. It is not progress. It is simply normalizing bad behavior. Obi's criticism was not aimed at embarrassing the government. It was aimed at waking the country up from a slow slide into a dangerous political culture. A culture where the public no longer expects honesty from leaders. A culture where failure is repackaged as achievement. A culture where power becomes the only qualification. And that is why Obi's message stung, because he was describing a reality many Nigerians see every day. He pointed out that when leadership rewards the wrong people, it weakens the moral foundation of the nation. It discourages hard-working citizens. It creates hopelessness. It destroys the idea that effort leads to progress. He warned that once a nation begins to reward people who contributed to public distrust, the entire society pays the price. The economy pays the price. The youth pay the price. The credibility of future elections pays the price. Obi's words carried weight not because he was loud, but because he was precise. He was describing a system that has normalized excuses instead of solutions. A system that keeps shifting blame instead of taking responsibility. A system that refuses to admit its own failures. And this is why this chapter is the breaking point of the story. Not because of drama, but because of truth. A truth that the nation needed to hear. A truth that forced everyone, supporters and critics, to look deeper into what Nigeria is becoming. Obi's message reminds Nigerians that accountability is not optional. It is the backbone of any nation that hopes to survive. And if leaders refuse to respect that, then the country itself begins to crumble. His voice rose at the exact moment Nigerians needed someone to speak for them. And in that moment, he captured the fear, frustration, and disappointment of millions who feel betrayed by a system that keeps rewarding the wrong people. That is why this chapter is called the breaking point, because it marks the moment Nigeria stopped pretending everything was fine, and finally faced the truth. The tension around the country was already high, but everything escalated when news broke that the DSS invited Datti Ahmed simply because he criticized the failure of this government. That single move changed the entire conversation. It was no longer only about questionable appointments. It became about something much darker, the attempt to silence criticism in a democracy. For Peter Obi, this was the moment the alarm could no longer be ignored. He knew what it meant. Nigerians knew what it meant. And anyone who has studied political power knew what it signaled. When a government begins to fear simple criticism, it is no longer confident in itself. Obi responded swiftly and firmly. His words were sharp but controlled, because he understood the weight of the situation. Datti was not just any critic. Datti was his former running mate in the last presidential election under the Labour Party. A man known for careful speech and disciplined reasoning. A man who, even during the heated election season, chose his words with restraint. So when the DSS decided to invite him over a comment that questioned government performance, Obi knew this was not about security. It was about control. It was about fear. It was about creating an atmosphere where citizens think twice before speaking the truth. He asked the most important question of all. How can a government that claims strength be intimidated by words? This question struck the core of the issue. Because governments with confidence respond to criticism with solutions, not intimidation. They correct mistakes, not hunt down those who point them out. They face truth, not silence it. Obi saw the invitation as a red flag, the kind that appears when leadership begins to drift away from democracy and toward suppression. He reminded Nigerians that the role of the DSS is national security, not political protection. And when a security agency shifts from protecting the nation to protecting the reputation of those in power, something fundamental is broken. He did not raise his voice. He did not use drama. But he made it very clear that a government that cannot handle criticism is a government that is already losing direction. Obi stressed that Datti did nothing wrong. He did not call for violence. He did not incite unrest. He simply expressed his disappointment in the leadership of the country, something every citizen has the right to do. But instead of addressing the issues raised, the government focused on silencing the messenger. That was the turning point. Obi warned that this kind of behavior is what destroys nations, not builds them. Because when citizens begin to fear their own voice, the country becomes a shadow of itself. The people lose confidence. The political space becomes hostile. And leaders become isolated from the reality around them. He reminded Nigerians that democracies survive because people speak, not because they stay silent. And when the state begins to punish speech, it creates a culture of fear that spreads through society like wildfire. According to him, the message behind the DSS action was clear. Do not question us. Do not challenge us. Do not expose our failures. But that message is the exact opposite of what a healthy nation needs. Obi pointed out that if the government truly believed in its strength, it would welcome criticism as an opportunity to improve. But when leadership becomes insecure, every form of criticism is seen as an attack, even when it is not. The invitation of Datti Ahmed also exposed a deeper truth. The government is more focused on defending its image than fixing the issues affecting the people. Instead of answering questions on insecurity, inflation, unemployment, economic hardship, and lack of direction, the spotlight was placed on silencing a critic. Obi voiced what millions were thinking but afraid to say, that the nation is sliding into a place where power protects itself, not the citizens. And once that happens, the people lose trust. Trust in leadership. Trust in institutions. Trust in justice. He reminded Nigerians that this is how decline begins, not suddenly, but through small steps, steps like intimidating critics, rewarding questionable figures, and ignoring the concerns of the public. Obi was not defending Datti because of past political ties. He was defending him because of principle. He was defending the right of every Nigerian to speak up. He was defending democracy itself. He warned that if citizens allow this type of action to pass without question, then more critics will be targeted. More voices will be silenced. More truth will be buried. And once silence becomes normal, freedom becomes a memory. In the end, his message was simple but powerful. A nation must never fear its own people. And leaders must never fear honest criticism. Because when criticism becomes a crime, leadership becomes tyranny. And Nigeria cannot afford that path. Peter Obi's words did more than criticize actions. They exposed a reality that many leaders pretend not to see. A reality that cannot be covered with speeches, announcements, or well-arranged statements. A reality that Nigeria has been struggling with for years, the slow collapse of accountability. In this chapter, the conversation leaves the noise and goes straight to the heart of the issue. What kind of nation is Nigeria becoming when those who speak the truth are targeted, while those who fail the system are promoted? Obi delivered this message in the calmest but most dangerous way for the government, with clarity. He did not use insults. He did not raise his voice. He simply explained what the entire country was beginning to understand. Nigeria is moving in a direction where power protects itself instead of protecting the people. And that is the most dangerous shift any society can face. Obi reminded Nigerians that the real strength of a government is not shown in how many people it can silence. Real strength is shown in how a government responds to the truth, especially when the truth is uncomfortable. A government that punishes critics shows only one thing: fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of accountability. Fear of citizens waking up and demanding more. Obi emphasized that leaders should not see citizens as enemies. Citizens are the owners of the country. Citizens are the employers of public officials. Citizens are the ones who suffer the consequences when leadership is weak or dishonest. So when the government begins to treat critics as threats, it means the leadership has forgotten why it exists in the first place. He made it clear that the decision to elevate controversial figures to ambassadorial roles was not just a poor decision, it was a dangerous message. Because ambassadorial appointments are not supposed to be consolation prizes or political rewards. They are supposed to be positions of trust, representing the entire nation before the world. Appointing individuals surrounded by public distrust means presenting that distrust on the global stage. It means telling Nigerians that public confidence does not matter. It means telling the world that Nigeria celebrates questionable conduct instead of confronting it. Obi's criticism was not based on bitterness or rivalry. It was based on principle. He reminded Nigerians that leadership carries a moral responsibility, and once that responsibility is abandoned, everything else collapses. He warned that the combination of two dangerous trends, rewarding questionable actors and silencing critics, creates a society that is slowly sinking even without realizing it. Because nations do not collapse only through war or disaster. Many nations collapse quietly, through the steady erosion of truth and justice. Obi's message forced Nigerians to look at a painful reality. The more the government suppresses criticism, the more the nation loses its voice. And a nation without a voice becomes a nation without direction. He pointed out that criticism is not hatred. Criticism is not sabotage. Criticism is not an attack on the country. Criticism is a warning sign. A warning sign that something is wrong and needs to be fixed. But when a government treats warnings as enemies, the problems grow larger, the mistakes grow stronger, and the consequences grow heavier. Obi stressed that democracy cannot survive on silence. It survives on debate, on accountability, on open conversations, on the courage of citizens to speak the truth even when it is not comfortable. He stated plainly that the DSS invitation to Datti Ahmed showed a government that is not listening. A government more interested in image than improvement. A government more focused on controlling the narrative than correcting the failures. And that is why Nigerians reacted strongly to Obi's message, because many of them have been living through the consequences every day. Rising prices. Joblessness. Security issues. Economic hardship that keeps getting worse. And leadership that keeps pretending everything is normal. Obi explained that no country grows by silencing those who point out problems. Real nations grow by facing their issues head-on, fixing them, and learning from them. But when a government chooses denial over action, the country suffers. When a government chooses intimidation over engagement, the country weakens. When a government chooses political loyalty over integrity, the country loses its foundation. His message was not a threat. It was a reminder. A reminder that Nigeria will not be saved by loud promises or strong speeches. Nigeria will only be saved when leaders choose truth over comfort, accountability over convenience, and integrity over political deals. Obi's words left a heavy silence across the political space because they were not just criticism, they were reality. And reality does not go away simply because leaders pretend not to see it. He ended his message with a simple truth. Nigeria is bigger than any administration. Nigeria is bigger than any political agreement. And no leader has the right to weaken the nation just to protect their image. In the end, Obi did not just speak for himself. He spoke for millions who feel ignored, silenced, and betrayed. And he reminded the government of something they often forget. The people are watching. And the people remember.